Have you ever fallen asleep to the chaotic sounds of Peter Griffin crashing through a wall or Stewie plotting world domination? Tonight we're diving deep into the bizarre, twisted, and surprisingly intricate world of Family Guy lore that's somehow become the perfect background noise for millions of viewers worldwide. From the hidden connections between episodes that span decades to the dark secrets lurking beneath Quahog's surface, this is your ultimate guide to the Family Guy universe that will either help you drift off to dreamland or keep you wide awake, questioning everything you thought you knew about America's most dysfunctional animated family. Family Guy has been on our screens for over 2 decades now, and what started as a simple animated sitcom has evolved into something far more complex and layered than most people realize. Tonight we're going to explore the deep lore, the recurring mysteries, the character backstories that only dedicated fans know about, and all the subtle details that make this show a fascinating rabbit hole to fall down as you're trying to fall asleep. Let's start with the Griffin family themselves, because there's so much more to these characters than meets the eye. Peter Griffin isn't just a bumbling father figure. His backstory reveals a man shaped by abandonment, neglect, and a desperate need for acceptance that manifests in increasingly destructive ways. We learn throughout the series that Peter was adopted, never knowing his real father until much later in the show's run. This abandonment issue explains so much about his behavior, his need to be the center of attention, and his often childlike approach to solving problems. But here's where it gets interesting for our sleepy exploration. Peter's job history reads like a fever dream. He's worked at a toy factory, been a fisherman, worked at a brewery, become a bodyguard, tried his hand at being a country music star, worked as a private investigator, and somehow ended up back at the brewery multiple times. Each job change represents a different phase of the show's evolution, and if you're watching chronologically as you fall asleep, you can actually track the show's tonal shifts through Peter's career moves. Lois Griffin presents an even more fascinating character study for our nighttime viewing. She comes from the wealthy Pewterschmidt family, which immediately sets up this class conflict that runs throughout the entire series. Her father, Carter Pewterschmidt, represents old money, conservative values, and everything that Peter both despises and desperately wants to be accepted by. Lois chose Peter over her privileged background, but this choice haunts their relationship in subtle ways that become more apparent when you're watching with sleepy, unfocused attention. The really interesting lore element here is how Lois's musical background keeps surfacing throughout the series. She's classically trained, she's performed professionally, and there are hints that she gave up a potentially successful career to become a housewife and mother. These musical moments in the show often serve as brief respites from the chaos, making them perfect for viewers who are using the show to wind down. Now let's talk about Meg, because her character arc is actually one of the most complex and disturbing elements of the Family Guy universe. What starts as typical teenage awkwardness evolves into something much darker. The family's treatment of Meg goes beyond normal sibling rivalry or parental frustration. It becomes a systematic emotional abuse that the show initially played for laughs, but gradually reveals as genuinely harmful. The lore around Meg includes several episodes that suggest she's actually the most mentally stable and capable member of the family, which makes her treatment even more tragic. She's shown to be intelligent, talented, and capable of genuine empathy, qualities that the rest of the family either ignores or actively punishes. For viewers drifting off to sleep, Meg's storylines often provide a strange sort of comfort because they're usually quieter and more introspective than the main family chaos. Chris Griffin's character development follows a different trajectory entirely. While he's often dismissed as the dumb kid, the show's lore reveals that Chris has artistic talent, musical ability, and emotional intelligence that surpasses most of his family members. His relationship with his father is complicated by Peter's own insecurities about masculinity and success. Chris represents the possibility of breaking the cycle of dysfunction, which gives his character an underlying hopefulness that works well for bedtime viewing. But let's dive into the real star of Family Guy's complex lore, Stewie Griffin. This character has undergone one of the most dramatic evolutionary arcs in television history. He started as a genuinely evil baby bent on world domination and matricide, but gradually transformed into a complex character dealing with identity, sexuality, and belonging. The show never explicitly addresses this transformation, which creates this fascinating ambiguity about whether Stewie actually changed or whether we're just seeing different aspects of his personality. The time travel episodes featuring Stewie create some of the most intricate lore in the entire series. His future selves, his various timelines, and his technological capabilities suggest a level of intelligence and capability that extends far beyond what we see in regular episodes. These time travel storylines often involve quieter, more contemplative moments that are perfect for viewers who are trying to relax. Stewie's relationship with Brian creates another layer of lore that's perfect for our sleepy exploration. Their friendship transcends the typical pet-owner relationship and becomes something closer to intellectual partnership. They travel together, solve problems together, and engage in philosophical discussions that often serve as the show's more thoughtful moments. Their dynamic provides a consistent emotional anchor throughout the series' more chaotic elements. Speaking of Brian, his character lore is incredibly rich and often overlooked. He's not just a talking dog. He's a failed writer, a recovering alcoholic, a liberal intellectual, and someone struggling with depression and self-worth issues. His various romantic relationships throughout the series reveal someone desperately seeking validation and connection. His death and resurrection in later seasons created one of the most emotionally impactful storylines in the show's history, demonstrating how attached viewers had become to his character. The setting of Quahog itself deserves exploration in our lore deep dive. This fictional Rhode Island town has its own mythology, complete with local celebrities, recurring businesses, and a distinct culture. The Drunken Clam serves as a central gathering place where much of the show's male bonding and philosophical discussions occur. Mort Goldman's pharmacy, the local news station, and various other businesses create a sense of continuity and community that grounds the more absurd elements of the show. Cleveland's departure and return to the series creates interesting lore implications. His time in Virginia with his own spin-off show exists in the same universe, and references to his experiences there occasionally surface in Family Guy episodes. This interconnected universe concept adds depth for viewers who are familiar with both shows. Quagmire's character provides some of the darkest lore in the entire series. While often played for laughs, his behavior patterns suggest serious psychological issues and criminal tendencies. The show occasionally hints at a more complex backstory involving his father's gender transition, his military service, and his dysfunctional relationship patterns. These darker elements create an interesting contrast with his seemingly cheerful demeanor. Joe Swanson's backstory as a disabled police officer adds another layer of complexity to the Quahog community. His accident, his marriage to Bonnie, and his struggle to maintain his sense of purpose and masculinity after becoming paralyzed provide some of the show's more serious emotional content. His friendship with Peter, Cleveland, and Quagmire often explores themes of loyalty, acceptance, and adaptation that work well for contemplative viewing. The show's cutaway gags, while seemingly random, actually create their own form of lore through recurring characters and situations. Conway Twitty appearances, the various historical figures Peter claims to have interacted with, and the recurring joke characters all contribute to the show's internal mythology. These cutaways often provide brief mental breaks that can be soothing for viewers trying to wind down. Family Guy's approach to continuity is deliberately loose, which actually makes it perfect for casual viewing. Unlike serialized dramas that require intense attention to plot details, Family Guy episodes can be enjoyed independently while still rewarding longtime viewers with references and callbacks. This makes it ideal for background viewing or for times when you're not paying complete attention. The show's musical numbers deserve special mention in our lore exploration. From Conway Twitty performances to elaborate Broadway-style productions, these musical interludes often serve as the show's most memorable and emotionally resonant moments. They break up the rapid-fire joke delivery and provide opportunities for character development and emotional expression. The various holiday episodes throughout the series create their own seasonal lore. Christmas episodes often explore themes of family, tradition, and redemption. Halloween episodes venture into horror and supernatural territory. These special episodes often feature higher production values and more elaborate storytelling that reward dedicated viewing. The show's treatment of religion, politics, and social issues creates ongoing lore threads that reflect changing social attitudes over the show's long run. Early episodes approach these topics differently than later ones, creating an interesting timeline of cultural evolution that can be tracked through the series' progression. Guest appearances and celebrity encounters in Family Guy often become part of the show's lore through recurring references and callbacks. These celebrity interactions sometimes extend beyond single episodes, creating ongoing relationships and references that reward longtime viewers. The various alternate reality and parallel universe episodes explore different versions of the Griffin family and Quahog community. These episodes often reveal character depths and relationship dynamics that aren't apparent in regular episodes. They also provide opportunities to explore what-if scenarios that add complexity to our understanding of the main characters. Family Guy's animation style evolution tells its own story about the show's development and budget changes over time. Early episodes have a distinctly different look and feel compared to more recent ones. This visual evolution creates a subtle timeline that longtime viewers can use to place episodes chronologically, even without checking air dates. The show's relationship with Fox Network, including its cancellation and resurrection, becomes part of its own meta-lore. Episodes that reference these real-world events blur the line between fiction and reality in ways that add extra layers for dedicated fans to discover and contemplate. As we wind down our exploration of Family Guy's rich lore landscape, it's worth noting that this depth and complexity is part of what makes the show so suitable for repeated viewing and background watching. There's always another layer to discover, another connection to make, another character detail to notice. Whether you're actively watching or letting it play, while you drift off to sleep, Family Guy's universe provides a consistent, familiar, and surprisingly deep world to explore. The beauty of Family Guy lore for bedtime viewing lies in its perfect balance of familiarity and discovery. You can watch episodes you've seen dozens of times and still notice new details, catch references you missed before, or simply let the familiar voices and situations wash over you as you relax. The show's episodic nature means you won't lose important plot threads if you fall asleep mid-episode, but its rich lore rewards those moments when you find yourself unexpectedly engaged and alert. Sweet dreams, and remember that somewhere in Quahog, Peter Griffin is probably about to do something that will somehow make perfect sense within the wonderfully chaotic universe that has been entertaining us for over 2 decades. Have you ever wondered why Family Guy has become the internet's unofficial lullaby? Tonight, we're diving deep into the bizarre, chaotic, and surprisingly comforting world of Quahog, Rhode Island, where nothing makes sense, and somehow that's exactly what our brains need to drift off to sleep. From Peter's ridiculous schemes to Stewie's world domination plots, we'll explore every corner of the Griffin family universe that has helped millions fall asleep over the past 2 decades. But first, let me ask you something. When was the last time you actually paid attention to a Family Guy episode from start to finish? If you're like most people, you probably can't remember, because this show has transcended traditional viewing. It's become background noise, comfort food for your ears, a familiar chaos that somehow brings peace to restless minds across the globe. The phenomenon of falling asleep to Family Guy isn't just coincidence. There's actually a psychological explanation for why this particular animated sitcom has become the go-to choice for nighttime viewing. The show operates on what I call controlled chaos. While the plots are completely unpredictable and often nonsensical, the characters remain consistent in their absurdity. Your brain recognizes the patterns even when the content is random, creating a perfect storm of familiarity and unpredictability that helps quiet anxious thoughts. Let's start our journey through Family Guy lore with the patriarch himself, Peter Griffin. This beer-loving, chicken-fighting, scheme-hatching father has been the center of countless storylines that range from mildly ridiculous to absolutely insane. Peter's character represents the everyman taken to impossible extremes. He works at a brewery, loves television, struggles with his weight, and has an adversarial relationship with his teenage daughter. These are relatable elements wrapped in layers of cartoon absurdity. One of the most enduring aspects of Peter's character is his ongoing feud with Ernie the Giant Chicken. This rivalry began over an expired coupon and has escalated into epic battle sequences that destroy entire city blocks. The chicken fights serve as a perfect metaphor for how Family Guy operates. What starts as something mundane and everyday transforms into spectacular chaos, yet viewers accept it as normal within the show's universe. Peter's job history alone could fill hours of content. He's worked at the Happy-Go-Lucky Toy Factory, tried his hand at various entrepreneurial ventures, and somehow always ends up back at the Pawtucket Brewery. His work relationships, particularly with his friends Cleveland, Joe, and Quagmire, form the backbone of many episodes. These friendships represent a kind of arrested development, where grown men engage in childish activities and conversations, creating a comfort zone that many viewers find soothing. Speaking of Peter's friends, each one represents a different aspect of suburban male friendship taken to cartoon extremes. Cleveland Brown, before moving to his own spin-off show, was the voice of reason in the group, though his definition of reasonable was still pretty skewed. Joe Swanson brings physical comedy through his wheelchair-bound police officer character, often engaging in activities that would be impossible for someone with his disability, which the show treats as completely normal. Then, there's Glenn Quagmire, the pilot with an insatiable appetite for romantic encounters. Quagmire's character serves as the show's id, expressing desires and behaviors that are completely inappropriate, but delivered in such an over-the-top manner that they become cartoon villainy rather than realistic threats. His famous giggity giggity catchphrase has become part of internet culture, often used ironically to reference something vaguely suggestive. The Griffin household itself is a character in the show. This typical suburban home has been destroyed and rebuilt countless times, serving as the stage for domestic chaos that somehow always resets to normal by the next episode. The living room, with its familiar brown couch and television, has become an iconic setting that viewers associate with comfort and routine. Lois Griffin represents the long-suffering wife archetype, but with layers of complexity that unfold over multiple seasons. Her wealthy background, her brief career as a model, and her occasional outbursts of violence create a character who's both nurturing and dangerous. Lois serves as the family's moral center, though her morality is often compromised by the show's need for comedy. Her relationship with Peter showcases a marriage that defies all logic, yet somehow works within the show's universe. The Griffin children each represent different aspects of growing up in modern America, filtered through the show's twisted lens. Meg Griffin, the teenage daughter, exists primarily as the family's punching bag. Her character represents every awkward teenager's worst fears amplified to ridiculous proportions. The family's treatment of Meg borders on cruel, yet it's presented in such an exaggerated manner that it becomes absurdist comedy rather than realistic family dysfunction. Chris Griffin, the teenage son, embodies adolescent confusion and hormones. His character often serves as Peter's mini-me, inheriting his father's capacity for poor decision-making while maintaining a certain innocent charm. Chris's storylines often explore themes of identity, attraction, and the awkwardness of growing up, but always through the show's comedic filter. But perhaps no character has captured audiences' imagination quite like Stewie Griffin, the infant with the British accent and dreams of world domination. Stewie represents pure ambition, untempered by experience or wisdom. His elaborate schemes for taking over the world, or eliminating his mother, provide endless entertainment, while also serving as commentary on human nature's darker impulses. Stewie's relationship with Brian the dog creates some of the show's most compelling storylines. Their friendship transcends species and age, representing an idealized relationship between two intelligent beings who understand each other completely. Brian serves as Stewie's confidant, partner in crime, and occasionally his voice of reason, though Brian's own flaws often make him an unreliable moral guide. Brian Griffin deserves special attention as perhaps the most complex character in the Family Guy universe. As an anthropomorphic dog who walks upright, drives a car, and engages in adult relationships, Brian represents the show's complete abandonment of logical consistency. He's a failed novelist, a liberal activist, and an alcoholic, creating a character who embodies both aspiration and failure. The show's use of cutaway gags has become its signature storytelling device. These random flashbacks, fantasy sequences, and non-sequitur moments serve multiple purposes. They allow the writers to explore any topic or reference any piece of pop culture without worrying about narrative consistency. For viewers trying to fall asleep, these cutaways create a dreamlike quality where anything can happen, and often does. Family Guy's relationship with pop culture is both parasitic and symbiotic. The show references everything from obscure television commercials to major historical events, creating a shared cultural experience for viewers. These references serve as comfort food for the brain, triggering recognition and nostalgia even when the context is completely absurd. The show's treatment of time and continuity is particularly noteworthy for sleep viewing. Characters can die and return to life, major life changes can be reversed without explanation, and the family's economic situation fluctuates wildly from episode to episode. This lack of consequences creates a consequence-free environment, where viewers don't need to worry about long-term character development or ongoing plot threads. Seth MacFarlane's voice work deserves recognition for contributing to the show's sleep-friendly qualities. His performance as multiple characters creates a consistent vocal landscape that becomes familiar and comforting over time. The way he delivers Peter's lines, Stewie's sophisticated vocabulary, and Brian's neurotic observations creates distinct character voices while maintaining an underlying consistency that helps viewers relax. The show's approach to controversial topics through cartoon abstraction makes it perfect for background viewing. Serious subjects are processed through layers of absurdity until they become manageable, non-threatening content. This filtering effect allows viewers to engage with complex themes without the emotional weight that might keep them awake. Family Guy's musical elements also contribute to its sleep-friendly nature. From Conway Twitty performances to original songs like Surfin' Bird, the show incorporates music in unexpected ways that create variety within familiarity. These musical interludes serve as natural breakpoints in the narrative flow, creating rhythmic patterns that complement the relaxation process. The show's animation style strikes a perfect balance between detailed enough to be interesting and simple enough to not be overstimulating. The character designs are iconic yet basic, allowing viewers to recognize what's happening without needing to focus intently on visual details. This visual simplicity makes it ideal for peripheral viewing as you drift off to sleep. Supporting characters like Herbert the elderly neighbor, the evil monkey in Chris's closet, and Death himself create a rich universe that extends beyond the Griffin family. These recurring characters provide continuity and familiarity, while also serving as sources of unexpected humor and comfort. The show's handling of social issues through satirical exaggeration creates a safe space for processing real-world anxieties. By taking serious topics and pushing them to absurd extremes, Family Guy allows viewers to engage with difficult subjects in a non-threatening way. This processing can actually be therapeutic for people trying to quiet their minds before sleep. Family Guy's influence on internet culture cannot be overstated. Memes, reaction GIFs, and quotable moments from the show have become part of online communication. This cultural penetration means that falling asleep to Family Guy connects viewers to a broader community experience, creating a sense of shared comfort and belonging. The show's production history includes periods of cancellation and revival, creating a mythology around its own existence. Fans who supported its return feel a personal investment in its success, making the viewing experience more emotionally satisfying. This investment translates into comfort when using the show as sleep aid, as viewers feel they're supporting something they helped save. As we wrap up our journey through Family Guy lore, it's worth considering why this particular show has achieved such a unique cultural position. In a world full of stress, uncertainty, and serious problems, Family Guy offers a space where nothing has permanent consequences, where the absurd is normal, and where even the worst situations somehow work out in the end. The show's genius lies not in its individual jokes or storylines, but in its creation of a universe where chaos and comfort coexist. For millions of viewers, the Griffin family's problems make their own seem manageable, while the show's predictable unpredictability provides just enough mental stimulation to quiet anxious thoughts without preventing sleep. Whether you're a longtime fan or someone who's discovered the show through its reputation as internet comfort food, Family Guy continues to serve as a bridge between consciousness and sleep, a familiar voice in the darkness that reminds us that tomorrow, like every Family Guy episode, is a fresh start, where anything is possible and nothing really matters. Sweet dreams, and remember, we all live in Quahog in our hearts, where the beer is cold, the chicken fights are epic, and Peter Griffin's laugh echoes through eternity. Picture this. You're scrolling through endless videos trying to find something to help you drift off to sleep, and somehow, you stumble across Family Guy lore. Sounds weird, right? But here's the thing that might surprise you. The chaotic world of the Griffin family actually contains some of the most bizarrely comforting storytelling patterns that work perfectly as background noise for sleep. Tonight, we're diving deep into the unexpected rabbit hole of Family Guy's hidden mythology, character backstories, and running gags that have been quietly building for over 2 decades. Trust me, by the end of this exploration, you'll understand why this animated chaos makes for surprisingly perfect sleep content. Let's start with something that might blow your mind. Family Guy isn't just random jokes thrown together. There's actually a complex web of continuity that runs through the entire series, creating this weird sense of familiarity that your brain craves when winding down. Think about it. Every episode follows certain predictable patterns. Peter does something stupid. Lois gets frustrated. Stewie plots world domination. Brian gets philosophical. Chris says something innocent yet profound, and Meg gets ignored. These patterns become almost meditative when you're not actively watching but just listening. The Griffin house itself has become this iconic location that feels more real than most TV homes. You know exactly where everything is. The living room with that brown couch facing the TV. The kitchen where most family arguments happen. Peter and Lois's bedroom where countless cutaway gags have originated. Stewie's room with all his advanced technology that somehow nobody questions. This geographical consistency creates a mental map that feels safe and familiar, exactly what your brain wants when transitioning to sleep. Now, let's talk about Peter Griffin's backstory, because it's way more elaborate than you might remember. Peter wasn't always the bumbling patriarch we know today. His childhood in Rhode Island shaped him in ways that the show has been slowly revealing for years. His relationship with his father, Mickey McFinnigan, later revealed to be Francis Griffin, created deep-seated issues around authority and approval that explained so much of his adult behavior. The revelation that Francis wasn't even his biological father added layers to Peter's identity crisis that runs throughout the series. Peter's various jobs throughout the show create this strange career timeline that somehow makes sense in the Family Guy universe. From his early days at the toy factory to his time at the brewery, each workplace became a setting for elaborate storylines and character development. His relationships with his co-workers like Joe, Quagmire, and Cleveland formed the foundation of the show's secondary character network. These aren't just random neighbors. They're part of an intricate social ecosystem that's been developing since episode 1. Speaking of Joe Swanson, his backstory represents some of the show's most surprisingly deep storytelling. The details of how he became paralyzed have been explored multiple times, each revealing adding new layers to his character. His police career, his relationship with his wife Bonnie, and his struggles with his disability are handled with unexpected sensitivity for a show known for its controversial humor. Joe's friendship with Peter represents this weird masculine bond that transcends typical sitcom relationships. Glenn Quagmire might seem like a one-note character, but his history is incredibly complex. His career as a pilot isn't just a job setup for jokes. It's connected to his adventurous personality, his worldliness, and his complex relationship with commitment. The episodes exploring his relationship with his father, his various romantic entanglements, and his twisted psychology reveal a character struggling with deeper issues beneath the surface humor. His rivalry with Brian creates ongoing tension that drives multiple episode plots. Cleveland Brown's departure and return to the show created this weird narrative gap that the writers have handled in interesting ways. His move to Stoolbend and eventual return to Quahog wasn't just a business decision. It was woven into the show's mythology in ways that acknowledge the real-world circumstances while maintaining fictional continuity. His relationship with his new wife Donna and his blended family created storylines that explored themes of second chances and family dynamics. Brian Griffin represents perhaps the show's most complex character development. He's not just a talking dog, he's a struggling writer, a recovering alcoholic, a liberal intellectual, and Peter's best friend, all wrapped into one character. His various romantic relationships, from his puppy love crushes to his serious adult relationships, have been explored with surprising depth. His death and resurrection created one of the show's most emotionally impactful storylines, proving that viewers had formed genuine emotional attachments to these characters. Brian's literary aspirations connect to larger themes about artistic struggle and unfulfilled potential that run throughout the series. His unfinished novel, his various writing projects, and his intellectual pretensions create this ongoing character arc about creativity and disappointment. His relationship with Stewie represents one of television's most unique friendships, transcending the typical pet-owner dynamic to become something genuinely touching. Stewie Griffin's evolution from world-conquering villain to sexually confused genius baby represents one of the most significant character developments in animation history. His early episodes focused on elaborate schemes to kill Lois and take over the world. Gradually, the show revealed deeper layers to his personality, exploring his relationships, his sexuality, and his genuine affection for his family, despite his sinister exterior. The time travel episodes featuring Stewie and Brian created an entire subplot mythology that spans multiple seasons. Their adventures through different time periods aren't just random comedy sketches. They're connected stories that explore themes of friendship, consequence, and the nature of reality itself. These episodes often contain the show's most sophisticated storytelling and emotional moments. Lois Griffin's background as a member of the wealthy Pewterschmidt family adds class dynamics to the show that create ongoing storylines. Her relationship with her parents, particularly her disapproving father Carter, creates tension that drives multiple episode plots. Her past as a fighter pilot, her various career attempts, and her struggles with being married to Peter add complexity to what could have been a simple housewife character. The Pewterschmidt family wealth creates opportunities for episodes exploring economic disparity, social climbing, and family expectations. Lois's siblings and their various successes highlight Peter's failures, while also exploring themes about different paths to happiness and fulfillment. These family dynamics feel surprisingly realistic for a cartoon family. Chris Griffin might seem like the least developed Griffin family member, but his character has subtle depths that emerge over time. His artistic talents, his social struggles, and his innocent observations about adult world create moments of unexpected wisdom. His relationship with his father Peter explores themes about masculine expectations and parent-child communication that feel genuine despite the show's comedic framework. Meg Griffin's role as the family scapegoat has evolved into something more complex than simple abuse humor. Episodes exploring her internal life, her social struggles, and her occasional moments of strength reveal a character dealing with realistic teenage issues. Her relationship with her family, particularly her mother Lois, touches on themes about parental favoritism and sibling dynamics that many viewers can relate to. The show's supporting characters create this entire universe of interconnected relationships. Characters like Mayor West, Principal Shepard, Dr. Hartman, and the various shopkeepers and townspeople aren't just one-off joke characters. They're part of Quahog's social fabric, appearing consistently enough to create familiarity and continuity that makes the fictional town feel like a real place. The recurring villains, like Ernie the giant chicken, the greased-up deaf guy, and various one-episode antagonists, create ongoing storylines that span multiple seasons. These aren't just random encounters. They're part of Peter's personal mythology, representing different aspects of his character conflicts and growth. Family Guy's cutaway gags might seem random, but they actually follow certain patterns and themes that create consistency within the chaos. The historical references, the pop culture parodies, and the absurdist scenarios often connect to the main storyline in subtle ways, reinforcing character traits or episode themes through seemingly unrelated comedy bits. The show's approach to continuity is uniquely flexible, allowing for both strict adherence to character development and complete abandonment of logic when comedy demands it. This creates a viewing experience that feels both familiar and unpredictable, perfect for background listening where you can drift in and out without losing track of what's happening. The musical elements of Family Guy, From Conway Twitty appearances to elaborate song numbers, create rhythm and pacing that works well for sleep content. These musical interludes provide natural breaks in dialogue while maintaining the show's energy and entertainment value. The familiar melodies and recurring musical themes create audio comfort that helps with relaxation. The voice acting consistency across hundreds of episodes creates character familiarity that transcends individual storylines. Seth MacFarlane's multiple character voices, along with the consistent supporting cast, create audio comfort that works particularly well when you're not actively watching. These familiar voices become almost like friendly companions as you drift off to sleep. The show's treatment of holidays and special occasions has created annual traditions within the Family Guy universe. Christmas episodes, Halloween specials, and other holiday-themed stories create seasonal familiarity that connects to real-world calendar events while maintaining the show's unique comedic perspective. These special episodes often contain the series' most heartfelt moments alongside the typical humor. Family Guy's approach to social commentary, while often controversial, creates ongoing themes about American culture, politics, and social issues that give depth to what could be purely surface-level comedy. The show's willingness to tackle difficult subjects, even through its comedic lens, creates content that engages with real-world issues while maintaining entertainment value. The international episodes and travel storylines have created a broader world beyond Quahog, showing how the Griffin family dynamics work in different settings while maintaining character consistency. These episodes expand the show's mythology while reinforcing core character traits and relationships that define the series. As we wind down this exploration of Family Guy's hidden depths, it's worth noting how the show's longevity has created this massive tapestry of interconnected stories, character developments, and running gags that form a complete fictional universe. Whether you're using it as sleep content or just appreciating its complexity, Family Guy offers way more than surface-level entertainment. The familiar voices, predictable patterns, and comforting chaos create perfect background audio for relaxation. Sweet dreams. And remember, tomorrow there will always be more Family Guy lore to discover and explore in this wonderfully weird animated world that's been part of our cultural landscape for over 20 years. Have you ever wondered why Family Guy was actually canceled twice before becoming one of the most successful animated shows in television history? Or why Seth MacFarlane almost died in the September 11th attacks, but a twist of fate involving a hangover literally saved his life? Today we're diving deep into the hidden world of Family Guy lore that will completely change how you watch this iconic show. Most people think they know everything about the Griffin family, but the truth is, there are layers of secrets, controversies, and mind-blowing, behind-the-scenes stories that Fox never wanted you to discover. From voice actors who were replaced without anyone noticing, to episodes that were banned from ever airing again, we're about to uncover the most shocking Family Guy secrets that have been hiding in plain sight for over 2 decades. But first, let me blow your mind with something that happened before the show even premiered. Seth MacFarlane was supposed to be on American Airlines Flight 11 on September 11, 2001, the same flight that crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. He had a ticket, his bags were packed, and he should have been on that plane. But here's the crazy part that nobody talks about. He overslept because he was hungover from a party the night before. That hangover literally saved his life and changed the entire trajectory of television comedy. Think about it for a second. If MacFarlane had made that flight, there would be no Family Guy, no American Dad, no The Orville, no billion-dollar animation empire. One night of partying in 2001 accidentally preserved one of the most influential creators in modern entertainment. But that's just the beginning of how strange and interconnected the Family Guy universe really gets. Let's start with something that will mess with your head every time you watch the show from now on. Mila Kunis, the voice of Meg Griffin, was only 14 years old when she started voicing the character. 14. She literally grew up recording in that booth, and her voice changing during puberty became part of Meg's character development. But here's the part that's even more insane. She lied about her age to get the job. When Kunis auditioned, she told the casting directors she was 18. She figured by the time they found out the truth, she'd already be established in the role. Her gamble paid off, but it created a bizarre situation where a teenage girl was voicing sexual jokes in adult situations that she wasn't even old enough to fully understand. The writers had to be careful about what lines they gave Meg because they had a minor in the recording booth. Speaking of voice acting mysteries, here's something that will make you question everything you think you know about the show's consistency. Phyllis Diller, the legendary comedian, was originally supposed to be the voice of Peter's mother, Thelma Griffin. She recorded several episodes worth of dialogue before the creators decided to kill off the character and replace her with Alex Borstein voicing Peter's new mother-in-law, Barbara Puderschmidt. But the weirdest part isn't that they changed voice actors, it's that they kept some of Phyllis Diller's recorded lines and mixed them with Alex Borstein's voice work in certain episodes. If you listen carefully to some of the early season episodes, you can actually hear the subtle differences in vocal tone and delivery that reveal this hidden voice actor swap that most fans never noticed. Now let's talk about the episode that almost destroyed Family Guy before it even became successful. The episode called When You Wish Upon a Weinstein was considered so controversial that it was pulled from Fox's lineup and didn't air until years later on Cartoon Network. The episode dealt with Peter wanting his family to convert to Judaism because he believed Jewish people were naturally good with money. The controversy wasn't just about the content, it was about the timing. This episode was supposed to air just months after the September 11th attacks, when religious tensions were at an all-time high. Fox executives were terrified that the episode would spark protests, boycotts, and potentially violent reactions. They locked the episode away and pretended it didn't exist for nearly 3 years. But here's what makes this story even more complex. Seth MacFarlane fought tooth and nail to get the episode aired because he believed it was actually pro-Jewish and was celebrating Jewish culture rather than mocking it. He felt that Fox was being cowardly and missing the point of the satire entirely. The battle over this one episode created a rift between MacFarlane and Fox executives that influenced how the show was handled for years afterward. This brings us to one of the most shocking secrets in Family Guy history. The show was actually canceled twice, and both times it came back from the dead through pure accident. The first cancellation happened after season 2, because Fox executives thought the show was too expensive to produce and wasn't attracting the right demographic. They wanted younger viewers, but Family Guy was primarily watched by college students and adults. Here's where it gets interesting. After the cancellation, Cartoon Network picked up the reruns and started airing them late at night. The show found its audience in this late-night slot, with viewers who were exactly the demographic Fox had been trying to reach. College students would come home from parties and watch Family Guy marathons until sunrise. The show became a cultural phenomenon through syndication, something that had never happened before with an animated series. The DVD sales were equally shocking. The first season DVD became one of the best-selling television DVDs of all time, outselling many major Hollywood movies. Fox executives couldn't ignore the numbers anymore. They had accidentally created a gold mine and then thrown it away. The revival of Family Guy after its first cancellation changed how television networks think about syndication and DVD sales forever. But the second cancellation is even more bizarre. After bringing the show back, Fox canceled it again after season 4 because they claimed it wasn't performing well in its Sunday night time slot. What they didn't tell anyone was that they were deliberately sabotaging the show by moving it around the schedule constantly. Some episodes aired on different nights without any promotion, making it nearly impossible for fans to keep track of when new episodes were airing. Seth MacFarlane was so frustrated with Fox's treatment of the show that he seriously considered moving Family Guy to a different network entirely. Comedy Central and Cartoon Network both made offers to pick up the series, which would have been unprecedented at the time. The idea of a major animated series switching networks mid-run had never happened before. What saved Family Guy the second time wasn't fan campaigns or DVD sales, it was the iTunes revolution. When Family Guy episodes became available for digital purchase, they consistently ranked as some of the most downloaded television content. Fox suddenly realized they had a digital gold mine on their hands and brought the show back for a third time. Now let's dive into some character secrets that will change how you see the Griffin family forever. Brian Griffin, the talking dog, was originally supposed to be much more of a background character. Seth MacFarlane voices Brian himself, and the character was initially just meant to provide occasional witty commentary. But MacFarlane found that Brian's voice came so naturally to him that he started writing more and more scenes for the character. Here's the mind-bending part. Brian Griffin is essentially Seth MacFarlane's alter ego. Almost every political opinion, cultural reference, and intellectual observation that comes out of Brian's mouth reflects MacFarlane's actual views. When Brian goes on rants about politics, religion, or social issues, you're literally hearing Seth MacFarlane's personal opinions filtered through a cartoon dog character. This became controversial when fans started to notice that Brian was becoming increasingly preachy and self-righteous in later seasons. Critics accused MacFarlane of using the character as a mouthpiece for his liberal political views, turning Family Guy into a platform for his personal agenda. The backlash became so intense that MacFarlane actually killed off Brian in a shocking episode, only to bring him back a few episodes later after massive fan outrage. But the Brian death episode reveals something even more interesting about how Family Guy operates behind the scenes. The writers had been planning Brian's temporary death for over a year, and they deliberately leaked fake spoilers to throw fans off the scent. They created elaborate fake scripts and even recorded fake voice acting sessions to maintain the secrecy of their plan. Stewie Griffin presents another layer of hidden complexity that most viewers completely miss. The character was originally designed to be a one-dimensional villain baby who wanted to kill his mother and take over the world. But as the show evolved, Stewie became more complex, and his sexuality became a subject of constant speculation and debate. Seth MacFarlane has given contradictory statements about Stewie's sexual orientation over the years, sometimes saying the character is gay, sometimes saying he's too young for sexuality to matter, and sometimes saying it's deliberately ambiguous. But here's what most people don't know. There are actually two different versions of Stewie, depending on who he's interacting with. When Stewie talks to Brian, he's portrayed as intelligent, sophisticated, and possibly gay. When he interacts with his family members, he's more like a regular baby with occasional moments of evil genius behavior. This isn't accidental. It's a deliberate, creative choice that reflects how different people see us differently in various relationships and contexts. The Stewie and Brian dynamic became so popular that entire episodes started focusing exclusively on their adventures together. These episodes, often called road trip episodes by fans, consistently rank among the most popular Family Guy episodes of all time. The chemistry between Seth MacFarlane's two most personal character voices created some of the show's most memorable moments. Let's talk about the celebrity guest stars and the shocking stories behind their appearances. When Drew Barrymore appeared on the show, she was going through a particularly difficult period in her personal life. The recording session was supposed to take 2 hours, but she stayed for 6 hours because she was having so much fun with the cast and crew. She later said that working on Family Guy was therapeutic during a time when she was struggling with addiction issues. But the most surprising celebrity appearance almost never happened. Patrick Stewart, who voices Susie Swanson, initially turned down the role because he thought the show was too crude and beneath his classical theater background. It was only after his agent convinced him to watch several episodes that he realized the show's intelligence hidden beneath its seemingly juvenile humor. Stewart became so invested in the character that he started suggesting storylines and character developments for Susie. He even offered to voice additional characters for free because he enjoyed the creative process so much. His enthusiasm for the show shocked many of his colleagues in classical theater who couldn't understand why a Shakespearean actor would want to be associated with Family Guy. The show's relationship with censorship creates another layer of hidden stories that most fans never hear about. There's an entire archive of Family Guy jokes, scenes, and episodes that were deemed too controversial to ever air. Some of these involve real celebrities who threatened legal action, while others were considered too offensive even for Family Guy's notoriously boundary-pushing standards. One particular episode that was completely scrapped dealt with Lois having an affair with a character based on a real-life politician. The episode was fully animated and voice-recorded before Fox executives realized the potential legal and political ramifications. The entire episode was locked away, and will likely never see the light of day. But perhaps the most fascinating aspect of Family Guy lore involves the show's influence on other animated series. South Park creators Trey Parker and Matt Stone have had a long-running feud with Seth MacFarlane, claiming that Family Guy relies too heavily on random pop culture references instead of actual jokes. This feud played out in several South Park episodes that directly mocked Family Guy's writing style. The rivalry became so intense that it actually influenced how both shows developed their comedy. Family Guy started incorporating more story-driven humor to counter South Park's criticism, while South Park began using more visual gags and pop culture references to prove they could do Family Guy's style better than Family Guy itself. Here's something that will completely change how you watch Family Guy cutaway gags from now on. Those random flashback scenes that seem completely disconnected from the main plot? Many of them are actually recycled jokes from Seth MacFarlane's college animation projects and failed pilot episodes. The writers have been mining MacFarlane's old material for decades, updating and reworking jokes that were originally created in the 1,990 seconds. Some of the most popular Family Guy moments are actually 20-year-old jokes that have been given new animation and context. The peanut butter jelly time sequence, one of the show's most famous moments, was based on an internet meme that MacFarlane had been wanting to incorporate into his work for years before Family Guy even existed. As Family Guy approaches its 25th season, these hidden stories and secret histories continue to shape how the show develops. Seth MacFarlane has hinted that there are major revelations about the Griffin family that haven't been revealed yet, suggesting that even longtime fans don't know everything about these characters they've been watching for decades. The show that started as a simple animated sitcom has become a complex web of cultural commentary, personal expression, and industry politics that extends far beyond what appears on screen. Every episode carries the weight of canceled seasons, industry battles, and creative compromises that most viewers never suspect. Understanding this hidden lore doesn't just make Family Guy more interesting, it reveals how the entire landscape of adult animation has been shaped by the accidents, controversies, and creative battles that brought the Griffin family to life and kept them alive against all odds. Have you ever wondered about the fascinating dynamics that shape families throughout history? Tonight, as you settle into your bedtime routine, let me share some captivating insights about how family patterns repeat across generations, creating an intricate web of inherited traits, behaviors, and destinies that might just help you drift off into peaceful slumber. Family structures have always been complex tapestries, woven with threads of genetics, environment, and circumstance. Consider how certain characteristics seem to flow like rivers through family lines, creating patterns that emerge generation after generation. These inherited traits aren't just physical features, like eye color or height, but can include personality quirks, talents, and even behavioral tendencies that create a unique family signature. The concept of generational influence runs deeper than most people realize. When we examine family trees, we often discover that certain professions, interests, or life choices appear repeatedly across different generations. A family might produce multiple musicians, teachers, or entrepreneurs, not just through conscious choice, but through a combination of genetic predisposition, shared values, and environmental factors that create natural pathways for similar expressions of human potential. Birth order plays a fascinating role in shaping family dynamics. Firstborn children often develop leadership qualities and feel responsibility for their younger siblings, while middle children frequently become skilled negotiators and peacekeepers. The youngest children in families tend to be more creative and risk-taking, having learned to find unique ways to capture attention and carve out their own identity within the family structure. Family traditions serve as invisible threads that bind generations together across time. These rituals, whether simple bedtime stories, holiday celebrations, or annual camping trips, create shared memories that become part of the family's collective identity. Even seemingly minor traditions like Sunday morning pancakes or evening walks can have profound psychological impacts, providing stability and continuity that children carry forward into their own families. The role of family nicknames reveals interesting patterns about relationships and hierarchies within family units. Often, these pet names originate from childhood moments or personality traits, but they can persist for decades, sometimes becoming more commonly used than actual given names. These linguistic markers create intimate bonds, while also establishing informal family roles and expectations. Consider the phenomenon of family talents that seem to skip generations. A grandparent's artistic ability might lay dormant in their children, only to resurface dramatically in grandchildren who never received formal training but somehow possess intuitive skills. This genetic memory suggests that our family heritage carries forward capabilities that can emerge unexpectedly, creating surprising connections across time. Family communication patterns often mirror broader cultural values and historical contexts. Some families maintain formal, hierarchical communication styles passed down from previous generations, while others adopt more casual, egalitarian approaches. These patterns influence how family members express emotions, resolve conflicts, and show affection, creating distinct family cultures that can persist for generations. The geographic movements of families create interesting stories of adaptation and change. When families migrate, whether across countries or just to different neighborhoods, they face decisions about which traditions to maintain and which to modify. This process of cultural negotiation often reveals the most essential elements of family identity, as members unconsciously choose which practices are too important to abandon. Family financial attitudes demonstrate remarkable consistency across generations. Families that experienced economic hardship often pass down frugal spending habits and strong work ethics, while families with consistent prosperity might emphasize different values around money and success. These economic philosophies become embedded in family culture, influencing career choices and life priorities for decades. The evolution of family roles over time reflects broader social changes while maintaining certain consistent patterns. Traditional gender roles within families have shifted significantly, yet many families still maintain informal divisions of labor and responsibility that echo historical patterns. Understanding these shifts helps us appreciate how families serve as bridges between past and present social norms. Family conflict resolution styles often become inherited patterns that influence how future generations handle disagreements. Some families emphasize direct confrontation and heated discussion, believing that airing grievances leads to stronger relationships. Others prioritize harmony and indirect communication, viewing conflict as something to be minimized rather than engaged. These approaches shape children's expectations about relationships throughout their lives. The role of family storytelling in preserving history cannot be overstated. Every family has its collection of stories about ancestors, significant events, and character-defining moments. These narratives serve multiple purposes. They preserve important information, reinforce family values, and create a sense of belonging to something larger than individual experience. The way these stories are told and retold shapes family identity. Family eating habits and food traditions reveal deep cultural connections and emotional bonds. Certain recipes become treasured family heirlooms, passed down with specific techniques and accompanying stories. The social dynamics around family meals, from formal dining protocols to casual kitchen conversations, establish patterns of gathering and sharing that influence social skills and relationship expectations. Educational values within families create powerful legacies that influence multiple generations. Some families prioritize formal academic achievement, creating environments where intellectual curiosity and scholarly success are highly valued. Others emphasize practical skills and hands-on learning, believing that real-world experience provides the best education. These educational philosophies shape career paths and life choices across generations. Family attitudes toward risk and adventure demonstrate interesting patterns of inheritance and rebellion. Conservative families might produce generations of careful planners and cautious decision-makers, while more adventurous families encourage risk-taking and exploration. Sometimes these patterns reverse, with risk-averse parents producing adventurous children as a form of generational rebellion or balance. The concept of family loyalty manifests in various ways across different family structures. Some families maintain strong expectations of mutual support and collective decision-making, while others prioritize individual autonomy and self-reliance. These loyalty patterns influence everything from career choices to marriage decisions, as family members navigate between personal desires and family expectations. Family creative expressions often create unexpected connections across generations. A love of music, visual arts, writing, or craftsmanship can emerge in various family members, sometimes connecting distant relatives who share artistic sensibilities. These creative threads create special bonds and often become sources of family pride and identity. The role of family pets in shaping household dynamics deserves special attention. Animals often become integral family members, teaching children about responsibility, empathy, and loss. The way families choose, care for, and remember their pets reveals important values about nurturing, commitment, and the circle of life. Family travel patterns and attitudes toward exploration influence worldview development across generations. Some families prioritize exposure to different cultures and experiences, believing that travel broadens perspective and builds character. Others focus on deep connections to local communities and familiar environments, emphasizing the importance of roots and stability. The management of family secrets and sensitive information creates complex dynamics that can influence relationships for generations. How families handle difficult topics like addiction, mental health issues, financial problems, or relationship conflicts establishes patterns of openness or secrecy that affect trust and communication across multiple generations. Family celebration styles reflect deeper values about community, tradition, and joy. Some families create elaborate celebrations for birthdays, holidays, and achievements, believing that marking special occasions strengthens bonds and creates positive memories. Others prefer quiet, intimate acknowledgments, focusing on personal meaning rather than external display. The role of extended family members like grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins in providing alternative perspectives and relationships cannot be overlooked. These connections often provide children with different models of adult behavior and alternative sources of support, enriching the family experience and providing backup systems during difficult times. Family decision-making processes reveal important patterns about authority, consensus building, and individual voice within family structures. Some families operate as democracies, where everyone's opinion carries weight, while others maintain hierarchical structures where certain members hold more influence. These patterns shape children's expectations about leadership and participation in other social contexts. The preservation and sharing of family photographs and mementos creates tangible connections to family history. The way families organize, display, and discuss these artifacts influences how younger generations understand their heritage and place within the family narrative. Digital technology has transformed these practices while maintaining their essential emotional functions. Family approaches to health and wellness often establish lifelong patterns that influence physical and mental well-being. Some families prioritize active lifestyles and preventive care, while others may have more reactive approaches to health issues. These attitudes toward physical maintenance and medical care create lasting influences on individual health choices. The way families handle transitions and major life changes reveals resilience patterns that can be passed down through generations. Some families thrive during periods of change, viewing challenges as opportunities for growth and adaptation. Others prefer stability and may struggle more with transitions, requiring additional support during periods of adjustment. Family gift-giving traditions and attitudes toward material possessions reflect deeper values about generosity, reciprocity, and the relationship between objects and emotions. Some families emphasize thoughtful, personalized gifts that demonstrate attention and care, while others focus on practical items or experiences rather than material objects. As we consider these intricate patterns that weave through family histories, we begin to understand that every family represents a unique experiment in human connection and development. The combinations of genetics, environment, choice, and circumstance create endless variations in how families function and evolve across time. Tonight, as you prepare for sleep, perhaps reflect on the fascinating tapestry of your own family story. Consider the threads that connect you to previous generations and the new patterns you might be creating for future ones. Family dynamics continue to pattern strang up to one zon. Evolve. influenced by changing social norms, technological advances, and individual choices. Yet certain fundamental human needs for connection, belonging, and identity remain constant across all family structures. These complex family systems remind us that we are all part of something larger than ourselves, connected to both past and future through invisible bonds of shared experience, inherited traits, and chosen relationships. Understanding these patterns can help us appreciate the remarkable diversity of human family experience, while recognizing the common threads that unite all families in their fundamental mission of nurturing, protecting, and preparing the next generation for their own journey through life. Sweet dreams, and may your rest be filled with peaceful reflections on the beautiful complexity of family bonds that connect us all across time and space. Did you know that Family Guy was actually canceled twice, and that Seth MacFarlane almost died in the September 11th attacks but missed his flight because of a hangover? And that's just scratching the surface of the absolutely wild behind-the-scenes stories that most people have never heard about this iconic show. What's up, everyone, and welcome back to the channel, where we dive deep into the hidden secrets of your favorite shows. Today, we're exploring some absolutely mind-blowing Family Guy lore that even die-hard fans probably don't know about. Trust me, by the end of this video, you'll never look at Peter Griffin the same way again. But before we jump into these crazy stories, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because we're constantly dropping content about your favorite animated series that you won't find anywhere else. And if you're a true Family Guy fan, drop a chicken fight emoji in the comments right now. Let's start with something that literally changed the course of television history. Seth MacFarlane was supposed to be on American Airlines Flight 11 on September 11th, 2001, the same flight that crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. The only reason he wasn't on that plane was because he had been out drinking the night before and overslept, missing his flight by just 15 minutes. MacFarlane has talked about this in interviews, describing how his travel agent called him frantically when she realized what had happened. Can you imagine how different the world of animation would be today if he had made that flight? No Family Guy revival, no American Dad, no The Orville. It's one of those sliding doors moments that completely altered entertainment history. Speaking of near-death experiences, did you know that Family Guy has been canceled not once, but twice? The show originally ran from 1999 to 2002 before Fox pulled the plug due to declining ratings. But here's where it gets interesting. The show found new life through DVD sales and reruns on Cartoon Network's Adult Swim block. The DVD sales were absolutely unprecedented for an animated series at the time. We're talking about millions of copies sold, which was unheard of for a canceled TV show. Adult Swim's late-night reruns were pulling in massive audiences, often outperforming the original Fox broadcasts. The demand became so overwhelming that Fox had no choice but to bring the show back in 2005. But the cancellation drama didn't end there. In 2007, Fox canceled the show again, this time after Season 5. Once again, fan outcry and continued strong performance in syndication forced the network's hand, and they renewed it for a 6th season. It's pretty incredible when you think about it. Family Guy might be the only show in television history to be saved by its fans twice. Now, let's talk about some character secrets that will blow your mind. Stewie Griffin's sexuality has been a topic of debate for years. But Seth MacFarlane actually revealed in interviews that Stewie was originally conceived as a completely straight character who would eventually grow up to be a normal heterosexual adult. The gay undertones that fans picked up on were never intentionally written into the character initially. However, MacFarlane later embraced the ambiguity and has said that Stewie exists in a kind of pre-sexual state where his eventual orientation is deliberately left unclear. This explains why sometimes Stewie seems attracted to women, sometimes to men, and sometimes to neither. It's a fascinating example of how a character can evolve beyond their creator's original intentions. Here's something that might surprise you about Brian Griffin. He was almost killed off permanently way before that infamous Thanksgiving episode where he actually died temporarily. In the early seasons, there were multiple discussions about removing Brian from the show entirely because some writers felt his character was becoming too preachy and unlikable. The writers experimented with making Brian more flawed and hypocritical to balance out his intellectual pretensions, which is why we see him become increasingly alcoholic and self-absorbed as the series progresses. This character development wasn't accidental. It was a deliberate attempt to make him more interesting and less of a mouthpiece for liberal talking points. Let's dive into some voice acting secrets that most people don't know about. Seth MacFarlane voices 4 main characters: Peter, Brian, Stewie, and Glenn Quagmire, Seth, but he also voices dozens of minor characters throughout the series. However, there are some characters he refuses to voice himself. For example, MacFarlane has stated that he deliberately doesn't voice any of the female characters because he believes women should voice female characters whenever possible. This is why actors like Alex Borstein voice Lois and Mila Kunis voices Meg. It's a surprisingly progressive stance for a show that often gets criticized for its treatment of female characters. Speaking of Meg, here's some dark lore about America's least favorite animated teenager. The character was originally supposed to be much more popular and central to the show's dynamic. In early concept art and scripts, Meg was portrayed as a typical popular high school girl who would serve as the voice of reason in the Griffin family. However, the writers quickly discovered that it was much funnier to make her the family's scapegoat and punching bag. What started as occasional jokes about Meg being unpopular gradually evolved into the running gag where literally everyone treats her terribly. The writers have admitted that they sometimes feel bad about how mean the show is to Meg, but the jokes are just too funny to stop. Here's a piece of lore that connects to real-world tragedy. The show has made several references to Conway Twitty, the country singer, usually by cutting away to him performing full songs as a way to pad the episode runtime. These cutaway gags became a running joke about lazy writing and time filling. However, there's a darker story behind this. Conway Twitty died in 1993, years before Family Guy even existed. Seth MacFarlane has revealed that the Conway Twitty gags were actually inspired by his own father's love of the singer's music. MacFarlane's father would play Conway Twitty songs constantly when Seth was growing up, and the extended musical cutaways were a way of honoring that memory, while also poking fun at television's tendency to use musical performances as filler. Let's talk about some episodes that almost didn't make it to air. The episode titled Partial Terms of Endearment was actually banned from broadcast television entirely. The episode deals with abortion and surrogate pregnancy in typical Family Guy fashion, but the content was deemed too controversial for Fox's standards. The episode was completely finished and was supposed to air during Season 8, but Fox refused to broadcast it. It was eventually included on the DVD release and made available online, but it remains the only Family Guy episode that has never aired on television in the United States. The controversy surrounding this episode led to stricter content guidelines for the show going forward. Here's something about the show's animation that most people never notice. In the early seasons, the animation style was much more crude and simple, partly due to budget constraints, but also because of the technology available at the time. However, if you watch closely, you'll notice that the animation quality suddenly improves dramatically around Season 4. This wasn't just because of increased budget, it was because the show switched animation studios. The original episodes were animated by a small studio that specialized in low-budget television animation. When the show was revived, Fox invested in higher quality animation produced by a different studio with more advanced technology and techniques. But here's the weird part. Some fans actually prefer the cruder animation style of the early episodes. They argue that the rougher animation gave the show more character and charm. The newer episodes, while technically superior, sometimes feel too polished and corporate compared to the scrappy early seasons. Let's explore some celebrity connections that might surprise you. Patrick Stewart, who voices baby Susie Swanson, actually improvises most of his lines. The writers typically give him a basic outline of what the character needs to say, but Stewart adds his own Shakespearean flair to every line reading. Stewart has said in interviews that voicing a baby character allows him to explore comedy in ways that his serious dramatic roles don't permit. He's also revealed that he often comes up with the most outrageous and inappropriate lines for baby Susie, pushing the boundaries of what the censors will allow. Here's some lore about the show's most controversial episodes. The episode where Brian and Stewie are trapped in a bank vault together for the entire episode was actually written as a bottle episode to save money on animation and voice acting. However, it ended up becoming one of the most critically acclaimed episodes in the show's history. The writers have revealed that they were initially worried the episode would be boring since it only featured two characters in one location for the entire runtime. But the episode's success proved that the show worked best when it focused on character development and dialogue rather than just rapid-fire jokes and cutaway gags. Speaking of experimental episodes, did you know that the show has done several episodes that exist in alternate universes or different time periods? These aren't just random creative choices. They're actually part of a larger multiverse concept that the writers have been quietly building throughout the series. The writers have hinted that all of these alternate reality episodes are connected and that there's a larger mythology about parallel dimensions that runs throughout the show. Most fans don't pick up on these connections because they're subtle and spread across multiple seasons, but dedicated viewers have started mapping out the multiverse timeline. Here's something about the show's music that most people don't realize. Seth MacFarlane is actually a trained singer and musician who has released several albums of standards and jazz music. Many of the musical numbers in Family Guy feature MacFarlane's actual singing voice, not just his character voices. MacFarlane has said that he uses Family Guy as a way to showcase different musical styles and pay homage to classic American songwriting. Some of the show's most elaborate musical sequences were specifically designed to highlight MacFarlane's vocal abilities and his love of traditional pop music. But here's the interesting part. MacFarlane has also revealed that he sometimes writes entire episodes around songs he wants to perform. The plot becomes secondary to the musical numbers, which explains why some episodes feel like they're structured more like variety shows than traditional sitcoms. Let's talk about some behind-the-scenes drama that most fans don't know about. There have been several major conflicts between the voice actors over the years, particularly regarding salary negotiations and creative control. The most significant dispute involved Mila Kunis, who voices Meg. During Season 7, there were reports that Kunis was considering leaving the show due to disagreements about her character's treatment and her compensation compared to other cast members. The situation was eventually resolved, but it led to changes in how Meg was written in subsequent seasons. Here's some dark lore about the show's influence on real-world events. Several episodes of Family Guy have been accused of predicting or inspiring real-world tragedies. The most notable example is an Innuendo episode that aired before the Boston Marathon bombing that featured Peter accidentally detonating bombs in Boston. The episode was pulled from reruns and streaming services after the bombing, and some conspiracy theorists claimed that the show somehow predicted the attack. Seth MacFarlane has addressed these claims, explaining that they're purely coincidental and that the show's writers don't have any special knowledge of future events. However, this incident led to increased scrutiny of the show's content and more careful consideration of how certain jokes and storylines might be interpreted in different contexts. Here's something about the show's international versions that might surprise you. Family Guy has been adapted for television in several different countries, and each version makes significant changes to accommodate local culture and censorship standards. The most interesting adaptation is probably the Arabic version, which removes all alcohol references, changes Brian from a dog to a cat, and significantly tones down the sexual humor. These changes are so extensive that the show becomes almost unrecognizable compared to the American version. As we wrap up this deep dive into Family Guy lore, it's clear that there's so much more to this show than meets the eye. From near-death experiences that changed television history to hidden multiverses and banned episodes, Family Guy has one of the richest and most complex backstories in animated television. These behind-the-scenes stories remind us that even our favorite comedies have real human drama and complexity behind them. The next time you watch Family Guy, you'll hopefully have a new appreciation for all the creative decisions, controversies, and coincidences that shape the show we know today. If you enjoyed learning about these hidden Family Guy secrets, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into your favorite shows. What other animated series would you like us to explore next? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next video, where we uncover even more secrets from the world of animation. Picture this. It's 2 in the morning. You're tossing and turning, unable to fall asleep. Your mind is racing with thoughts about tomorrow's responsibilities, that awkward conversation from 3 weeks ago, and whether you left the stove on. What you need isn't another meditation app or white noise machine. You need something perfectly mundane, yet oddly fascinating. You need random Family Guy facts that will occupy just enough of your brain to let sleep creep in without being so exciting that they keep you awake. Tonight we're diving into the wonderfully weird world of Quahog, with facts so specific and delightfully pointless that they'll have you drifting off faster than Peter Griffin at a feminist poetry reading. Let's start with something that sounds completely made up but is absolutely real. The chicken fights between Peter Griffin and Ernie the Giant Chicken have collectively lasted over 20 minutes of screen time across all episodes. 20 minutes. That's longer than most sitcom episodes dedicate to their main plot. These epic battles began over something so ridiculously petty that it perfectly encapsulates the show's absurdist humor. An expired coupon. Not a life-changing amount of money, not a family heirloom, but a piece of paper that saves you maybe 50 cents on chicken feed. Yet this trivial dispute has spawned some of the most elaborate and destructive fight sequences in television history. The creators didn't plan for these fights to become a recurring element. The first chicken fight was supposed to be a one-off gag, but audience response was so positive that it became a signature element of the show. Each subsequent battle had to top the previous one in terms of scope and destruction. They've fought in the streets, crashed through buildings, battled in the sky, and even taken their conflict underwater. The animators spend weeks choreographing these sequences, treating them with the same attention to detail that major studios reserve for blockbuster action films. Here's something that might surprise you about the show's production process. Every episode of Family Guy requires approximately 15,000 individual drawings. In the digital age, this seems almost quaint, but the show maintains a hand-drawn aesthetic that demands incredible attention to detail. Each character's movement, each facial expression, each background element starts as a pencil sketch. The animators have developed shortcuts and techniques over the years, but the fundamental process remains surprisingly labor-intensive. The voice actors record their lines before any animation begins, which means the animators have to match the drawings to the vocal performances rather than the other way around. This creates some interesting challenges. Seth MacFarlane voices multiple characters, and he often has conversations with himself during recording sessions. The sound engineers have become experts at seamlessly blending these multi-character performances, creating the illusion that Peter, Brian, and Stewie are actually in the same room talking to each other. Speaking of voices, here's a fact that demonstrates just how integral Seth MacFarlane is to the show's DNA. He voices 4 main characters, plus dozens of recurring characters and one-off personalities. When he temporarily stepped back from the show to focus on other projects, the producers seriously considered ending Family Guy rather than recasting his roles. They eventually found ways to work around his reduced availability, but it highlighted how deeply connected the show is to MacFarlane's specific vocal talents and comedic sensibilities. The show's relationship with censorship has produced some genuinely bizarre situations over the years. There are jokes that were cut from the television broadcast but restored for DVD releases, creating alternate versions of episodes that exist in different formats. Some episodes have different running times, depending on where and how you watch them. The censors have made requests that seem arbitrary to outside observers. Violence is often acceptable, but certain types of language or visual gags get flagged for removal. This has led to some creative workarounds by the writing team. They've developed a sort of code for getting controversial material past the censors. Sometimes they'll include an extremely offensive joke that they know will be rejected, making their actually intended joke seem mild by comparison. It's a psychological negotiation tactic that has become part of their standard writing process. Here's something that sounds like trivia, but actually reveals something profound about how the show is made. The writer's room keeps a collection of rejected joke ideas that they call the too weird pile. These aren't jokes that are too offensive or inappropriate, but rather concepts that are so strange or specific that they don't fit into any episode. Occasionally, they'll build an entire storyline around one of these orphaned ideas, which explains why some episodes feel like fever dreams that shouldn't work but somehow do. The show's approach to celebrity cameos is more strategic than it might appear. When famous people appear as themselves, they're usually playing exaggerated versions of their public personas rather than trying to seem likable or relatable. The writers deliberately lean into whatever characteristic or controversy that celebrity is known for, creating appearances that feel more like roasts than typical guest spots. This approach has occasionally caused problems when celebrities change their minds about how they want to be portrayed, leading to last-minute script changes or even canceled episodes. Family Guy's relationship with its own continuity is fascinatingly inconsistent. The writers will sometimes reference events from episodes that aired years earlier, demonstrating that they do pay attention to their own history. But they'll just as often completely ignore or contradict previously established facts about the characters or their world. This isn't laziness or poor planning, but rather a deliberate choice to prioritize individual episode quality over series-long consistency. The animation team has developed a visual shorthand for different types of scenes that regular viewers might not consciously notice but definitely feel. Flashback sequences use slightly different color palettes and animation techniques. Dream sequences have their own visual language. Even the way characters move changes depending on whether a scene is meant to be realistic or cartoonish within the show's already cartoonish world. Here's a production detail that reveals how much thought goes into seemingly throwaway moments. Background characters and crowd scenes aren't just randomly generated. The animators create specific individuals with their own implied backstories, even though these characters might only appear for a few seconds. They've developed a whole population of Quahog residents who appear in multiple episodes, creating an illusion of a lived-in community, even though most viewers would never consciously recognize these recurring background players. The show's musical numbers require a completely different production pipeline from regular episodes. They start with Seth MacFarlane or other musically inclined staff members creating rough recordings of the songs. Then professional arrangers develop full orchestrations. The voice actors record their vocals to these arrangements. Only after all the music is complete do the animators begin creating visuals to match. This process can take months for a single musical sequence, which explains why these segments often feel more polished and elaborate than the surrounding episode. Family Guy's approach to holiday episodes reveals something interesting about how the writers view their own show. They treat holiday specials as opportunities to experiment with different formats or storytelling techniques. Rather than simply plugging their characters into traditional holiday scenarios, Christmas episodes might be musicals, Halloween episodes might be horror parodies, and so on. This keeps the show from falling into the predictable patterns that plague many long-running series. The show's merchandise presents some unique challenges because of how the characters are designed. Peter Griffin's proportions don't translate well to three-dimensional objects, leading to action figures and toys that look subtly wrong. The merchandising team has had to develop modified character designs specifically for products, creating versions of the characters that maintain their essential appearance while being more practically manufacturable. Here's something that demonstrates the show's attention to detail in unexpected areas. The writers have created complete backstories for characters who have never appeared on screen. They know the names and personalities of Brian's parents, even though this information has never been relevant to any episode. They've developed detailed histories for minor recurring characters that extend far beyond anything that's ever been shown. This background work helps maintain consistency in how these characters behave, even when they're only making brief appearances. The show's relationship with its own spin-offs created some interesting continuity challenges. When the Cleveland show was in production, storylines had to be coordinated between writing teams to ensure that Cleveland's appearances on Family Guy didn't contradict what was happening on his own show. This led to some awkward scheduling situations where episodes had to be rewritten or delayed to maintain consistency across both series. Family Guy's approach to celebrity deaths has evolved over the years in response to changing cultural sensitivities. Early episodes would sometimes include jokes about recently deceased public figures, but the writers now generally avoid this territory. Unless enough time has passed for such references to feel like historical commentary rather than current events humor. This self-imposed guideline has prevented some potentially awkward situations where episodes would have aired shortly after unexpected celebrity deaths. The show's animators have developed specialized techniques for different types of scenes that regular viewers probably don't notice but contribute to the overall viewing experience. Fight scenes use different frame rates and animation principles than dialogue scenes. Fantasy sequences might employ completely different artistic styles. The animators treat each type of scene as requiring its own approach, making Family Guy more visually diverse than many people realize. Here's a fact that illustrates how deeply the show has embedded itself in popular culture. The writers receive hundreds of suggestions from fans every week, ranging from episode ideas to character suggestions to complaints about plot inconsistencies. While they can't use fan-submitted ideas for legal reasons, these communications help them understand how their audience perceives the show and what elements are most popular or problematic. The show's approach to social media and internet culture has changed dramatically over its run. Early episodes barely acknowledged the existence of the internet, while recent seasons treat social media and online culture as fundamental aspects of modern life. The writers have had to learn new forms of humor and reference that didn't exist when the show began, essentially evolving their comedy style to match changing technology and communication patterns. Family Guy's international versions present fascinating translation challenges. Jokes that rely on American cultural references or wordplay often can't be directly translated, leading to completely different jokes in dubbed versions. Some countries have created culturally specific versions of certain episodes, replacing American references with local equivalents. This has resulted in versions of Family Guy that are almost entirely different shows while maintaining the same basic characters and plot lines. The show's writers maintain detailed style guides that specify how each character speaks, what types of references they would make, and how they would react in different situations. These guides help maintain consistency across different writers and ensure that characters don't drift too far from their established personalities. Brian's dialogue, for example, follows specific patterns that reflect his pretentious intellectual aspirations, while Chris's speech patterns reflect his slower mental processing speed. Here's something that reveals the show's commitment to its own absurdist logic. The writers have created internal rules for how the show's universe works that they follow even when these rules are never explicitly stated. They know how long it takes to travel between different locations in Quahog, which characters know each other, and what each character's financial situation is like. This background consistency helps ground even the most ridiculous storylines in something resembling reality. The show's merchandise licensing deals have created some genuinely strange products over the years. There have been Family Guy-themed everything from breakfast cereals to car accessories to wedding decorations. The licensing team has to consider whether each potential product fits with the show's brand, leading to some philosophical discussions about what Family Guy represents as a cultural entity beyond just a television program. Family Guy's approach to controversial topics has become more sophisticated over the years, moving from simple shock value toward more nuanced satirical commentary. The writers now spend considerable time researching topics before writing about them, ensuring that their jokes come from a place of understanding rather than ignorance. This doesn't mean they avoid controversial subjects, but rather that they approach them with more intentionality. The show's animators have developed a visual signature that makes Family Guy immediately recognizable, even in brief clips or promotional materials. This involves not just character design but also choices about color palettes, camera angles, and motion principles. New animators joining the team have to learn these specific techniques to ensure visual consistency across different episodes and seasons. Here's a production detail that most viewers would never think about, but significantly impacts the viewing experience. The show's sound design team creates distinct audio signatures for different characters and locations. Peter's footsteps sound different from Brian's. The Griffin house has its own acoustic characteristics, and even the way doors close varies depending on the context. These subtle audio cues help create the illusion of a consistent physical world, even though everything is animated. As you drift off to sleep tonight, remember that somewhere in the world, animators are drawing the next batch of Family Guy episodes, voice actors are recording dialogue for situations that don't exist, and writers are debating whether jokes about topics you've never considered are funny enough to include in a television show. The machinery of entertainment continues turning even while you rest, creating the content that will occupy your mind during tomorrow night's journey toward sleep. Sweet dreams. And remember that in the grand scheme of things, we're all just characters in someone else's animated universe, trying to make sense of the absurd situations we find ourselves in. Hey there, night owls and Family Guy fanatics! If you're settling in for some bedtime content about everyone's favorite dysfunctional animated family, you've come to the right place. Tonight we're diving deep into the Griffin household with some fascinating facts that'll either help you drift off peacefully or keep you up thinking about just how wild this show really gets. Now, before we jump into our relaxing journey through Quahog, let me ask you something. Have you ever really stopped to think about how Family Guy has been part of our lives for over 2 decades? Since 1999, this show has given us countless laughs, memorable cutaway gags, and characters that have become household names. But tonight, we're going beyond the surface-level humor to explore some truly mind-blowing details you probably never knew. Here's something that might surprise you right off the bat. Family Guy was actually canceled not once, but twice by Fox. The first cancellation happened in 2002 after just 3 seasons. The network executives thought the show wasn't finding its audience. But here's where it gets interesting. Adult Swim picked up the reruns, and the show exploded in popularity. The DVD sales went through the roof, and suddenly Fox realized they had made a massive mistake. They brought it back in 2005, and it's been running ever since. Sometimes, the best things in life really do come back when you least expect them. Let's talk about the voice behind Stewie Griffin for a moment. Seth MacFarlane, the show's creator, originally based Stewie's voice on a combination of Rex Harrison from My Fair Lady and a generic posh English accent. But here's the fascinating part. MacFarlane has mentioned in interviews that Stewie's sexuality has always been deliberately ambiguous. The character exists in this interesting space where his romantic interests shift depending on what serves the story best. It's actually a clever writing technique that keeps the character unpredictable and allows for more diverse storylines. Speaking of voices, did you know that Seth MacFarlane voices not just Stewie, but also Peter Griffin, Brian Griffin, Glenn Quagmire, Tom Tucker, and Carter Pewterschmidt? That's 6 major characters, all coming from one incredibly talented vocal performer. When you think about it, MacFarlane is essentially having conversations with himself in most scenes. The man has to switch between these distinct personalities, sometimes within the same sentence. It's like being a one-person theater troupe. Here's a production fact that'll blow your mind. Each episode of Family Guy takes approximately 10 months to complete, from initial concept to final product. The animation process alone requires hundreds of individual artists working on different aspects. Every single movement, facial expression, and background detail has to be hand-drawn and then digitally colored. When you consider that the show produces over 20 episodes per season, you start to realize the incredible amount of work that goes into bringing the Griffin family to life. The show's famous cutaway gags weren't actually planned from the beginning. They evolved naturally as the writers found themselves wanting to include jokes that didn't fit into the main storyline. These random flashbacks and fantasy sequences became such a signature element that other animated shows have tried to copy the format, but none have quite captured the same spontaneous energy that Family Guy brings to these moments. Now, let's explore some character development that might help you see the show in a new light. Brian Griffin, the family dog, was originally going to be much more of a background character. MacFarlane has said that Brian evolved into the show's voice of reason almost by accident. The writers kept finding themselves using Brian as a way to comment on Peter's more outrageous behavior, and gradually he became this intellectual counterpoint to the family's chaos. It's interesting how a character can grow beyond their original intended purpose. Here's something about the show's cultural impact that's worth pondering as you drift off tonight. Family Guy has been translated into dozens of languages and broadcasts in over 100 countries worldwide. But the cultural references and American humor don't always translate perfectly. International versions sometimes have to completely rewrite jokes or replace cultural references with local equivalents. Imagine trying to explain a 1,980 seconds American pop culture reference to someone in rural Japan. The localization teams for this show deserve serious recognition. The relationship dynamics within the Griffin family actually reflect a lot of real family psychology, despite all the absurd situations they find themselves in. Take the sibling rivalry between Chris and Meg, for example. While it's exaggerated for comedic effect, it captures something genuine about how teenagers navigate their place within family hierarchies. Even the marriage between Lois and Peter, with all its dysfunction, touches on real issues that many couples face, just amplified to ridiculous proportions. One aspect of the show that's evolved significantly over the years is its approach to social commentary. Early seasons focused more on pure absurdist humor, but as the series progressed, it began tackling more complex social and political issues. The writers found ways to embed serious conversations about topics like religion, politics, and social justice within the framework of outrageous comedy. It's like sneaking vegetables into a kid's favorite dessert. The animation style of Family Guy has also undergone subtle but significant changes over the decades. If you compare early episodes to recent ones, you'll notice the color palette has become richer, the character movements more fluid, and the background details more elaborate. Technology has allowed the animators to add layers of visual storytelling that weren't possible in the better show's early days. Yet they've managed to maintain the core visual identity that makes Family Guy instantly recognizable. Let's talk about the show's relationship with music for a moment. Family Guy has featured hundreds of musical numbers over the years, from elaborate production numbers to simple character songs. Seth MacFarlane's background in musical theater heavily influences these sequences. Many of the songs are surprisingly well crafted from a musical standpoint, with proper verse-chorus structures and sophisticated orchestrations. Some episodes are essentially animated musicals disguised as sitcom episodes. Here's a fascinating detail about the show's writing process. The writer's room operates on a principle they call yes and, borrowed from improvisational comedy. When someone pitches an idea, no matter how outrageous, the group tries to build on it rather than shut it down immediately. This approach has led to some of the show's most memorable and bizarre moments. It's a reminder that creativity often flourishes when we suspend our initial judgment and let ideas develop naturally. The character of Meg Griffin represents something unique in television comedy. She's simultaneously the most normal member of her family and the one who receives the most abuse from everyone around her. This creates an interesting dynamic where the audience often sympathizes with her while still laughing at her misfortunes. It's a delicate balance that the writers have maintained for over 20 years, and it speaks to something deeper about how we treat people who don't fit into expected social roles. Cleveland Brown's departure to his own spin-off show and eventual return to Family Guy created some interesting continuity challenges for the writers. They had to explain his absence and return in ways that felt natural to the ongoing story, while also acknowledging the real-world production reasons behind these changes. It's a perfect example of how television shows must constantly adapt to behind-the-scenes realities while maintaining narrative consistency. The show's approach to time and continuity is intentionally flexible. Characters age slowly or not at all, major events from one episode might never be mentioned again, and the family's financial situation fluctuates wildly depending on story needs. This loose approach to continuity allows for maximum creative freedom, but also creates opportunities for dedicated fans to spot inconsistencies and create theories about the show's internal logic. Family Guy's influence on internet culture cannot be overstated. Countless memes, viral videos, and social media trends have originated from or been inspired by the show. The phrase, "Oh no, he didn't," might never have become a cultural touchstone without Peter Griffin's dramatic delivery. The show's rapid-fire humor style has influenced how people create and consume comedy content online. The voice acting in Family Guy extends far beyond the main cast. Over the years, the show has featured hundreds of celebrity guest voices, from major Hollywood stars to political figures to fellow comedians. Some guests play themselves, others take on original characters, and a few have become recurring voices in the Family Guy universe. The casting directors have an impressive ability to match celebrity voices with characters that enhance rather than distract from the story. Here's something that might help you appreciate the show's craft as you wind down for the night. The timing of Family Guy's comedy is incredibly precise. Voice actors don't just deliver lines. They perform them with specific rhythms and pauses that maximize comedic impact. The editors then fine-tune these performances, sometimes adjusting timing by fractions of seconds to hit the perfect comedic beat. It's a level of precision that most viewers never consciously notice but definitely feel. The show's relationship with censorship has evolved significantly since its early days. Standards and practices for television have changed, allowing Family Guy to push boundaries that would have been impossible in its first seasons. At the same time, the writers have developed more sophisticated ways to be provocative without simply relying on shock value. It's an interesting case study in how creative people adapt to changing cultural standards while maintaining their artistic voice. As we near the end of our journey through these Family Guy facts, consider how the show has managed to remain relevant across multiple generations of viewers. People who watched the show as teenagers in the early 2000s are now watching it with their own children. The humor that resonates with different age groups varies, but there's something universal about the Griffin family's chaotic energy that transcends generational boundaries. The production team behind Family Guy has created what amounts to a small animation empire. The success of the main show led to spin-offs, specials, video games, merchandise, and even live concert tours featuring the show's music. From a business perspective, Family Guy demonstrates how a creative property can expand far beyond its original medium while maintaining its core identity. Finally, as you settle in for sleep tonight, remember that Family Guy represents something special in the landscape of American entertainment. It's a show that dares to be completely ridiculous while occasionally touching on profound truths about family, society, and human nature. Whether you're a longtime fan or someone who just discovered the show, there's something comforting about knowing that somewhere in the fictional town of Quahog, the Griffin family is probably getting into some new absurd adventure. The next time you watch Family Guy, you might find yourself noticing details you never saw before, appreciating the craft behind the chaos, or simply enjoying the comfort of familiar characters doing wonderfully unpredictable things. Sometimes the best. Entertainment doesn't try to change your life. It just makes the everyday world a little more interesting and a lot more fun. Sweet dreams, and remember, tomorrow's another day in Quahog, and there's always another ridiculous adventure waiting just around the corner. Whether you're Team Peter, Team Brian, or even Team Meg, the Griffin family will be there whenever you need a laugh or just want to escape into a world where anything can happen, and usually does.